why are companies laying people off a week or two before Christmas?
The CEOs are greedy and they want to get their own bonus payout. When CEOs lay people off, they cut off how much money they have to spend on salaries, and the severance payouts that they give to these people, they're going to use it as a tax write-off for that year. So now that they're not spending money, it looks like they've earned money, even though they haven't earned money. They just laid people off. Now, Shakespeare said it best, because herein lies the rub. CEOs don't get paid like us normies. Yes, they get a salary, but they also get a ridiculous cash bonus, and they get stock in the company. So if the company performs well, then the stock price will go up. This is true for publicly traded companies and for privately held companies. So the CEO lays people off, artificially inflates the value of the company. Then when next year rolls around, they talk about how well the company did. They can go, oh, look at all this money we made. When in fact, they just, laid people off to make it look like they actually made more money than they did. So then the CEO is then rewarded with a fat cash bonus. Then the shares that they got, or the shares that they have, go up in value, and then they'll probably get even more shares.
Yes, this is especially for people new to the workforce in the world of corporate. Okay, I work in the world of education, but I did spend 15 years in the corporate world. This is very common. It's very common to see layoffs at the holiday time. And then what do they do at the beginning of January? They rehire people. Very common. And this is why, even though, it's difficult going through a layoff, because I've been laid off a couple times when I was in corporate as well. Even though it's difficult being laid off, depending upon the industry area that you are in, it may or may not be difficult to find a replacement job. The hardest part is going to be finding a job that makes the same amount of pay, especially people laid off in this economy. But she's absolutely correct. It's just a numbers game is all it is with corporate. You have to remember, it's not personal. I know it's hard to believe that. It's actually not. Okay? But for people who are very into the bottom line, it's about the shareholders. It's about how much is being made. And not that I'm excusing that, okay, but we have to remember something. A lot of people have investments in companies. Okay? You yourself may be a shareholder in a company, or your retirement plan may be, you may not know all the companies that it's involved in, but most investments, okay, you're a shareholder in some company one way or another, whether you know it or not. All right, especially if you're going through corporate and like what is something like pensions and stuff like that. So it's really easy for us to say, oh, bad, bad, bad. But then what do you think when you find out you are part shareholder in a company? That's why we have to ask ourselves, is it all about the bottom line? I personally don't think it's all about the bottom line. I think there can be some sort of give and take. But on one hand, we say shame, shame, shame. But on the other hand, let's be honest, we say, oh, if we're shareholders in a company, we want as much profit as we can. But at what cost? And whose cost? Something to think about. There's no right, there's no easy answer. All I can say is, folks, it's the capitalist way.
Earlier this year, my husband was laid off from his job because his role was eliminated and resourced to overseas. And he has spent a long 10 months looking for jobs. He was offered another job, but it was out of state. And even though it was kind of his dream job, he decided to turn it down because he didn't want us moving. But just due to how the job market is, and it was so hard for him to find roles in his field here in Houston due to the market being very saturated, he did end up accepting another offer, which was out of state, and therefore we are going to be moving out of state for a while. And that's why I say it might end up being our last Christmas in this house.
I was a little confused because she said he was offered what was, or at least part of his dream job that was going to be out of state, and then they moved out of state anyways for another job. So hopefully that out of state job was for their dream job. I think a lot of people, again, we're talking in this, economy, you're going to have to be flexible as to where you go for the type of job you have. I used to, when I was in my 20s, I got my bachelor's degree in journalism from the University of Oregon. One of the reasons I chose not to pursue broadcasting. Least of the fact being that's actually a very hard industry to get into. Okay, and you got to think back into the 80s and stuff. Not an easy industry to break into. But one of the things that I really had not come to realize was if I was going to chase a job like that, chances are, unless I just wanted to be, basically a small town anchor, okay, and you want to try to grow and develop and get into bigger industries, you have to be willing to move. There are some jobs that when you major in college, you really need to ask yourself, how often do you want to move to be able to stay with your industry? And if you are, let's say, living in a smaller town, what size town are you willing to move to so you can be in your job that you majored in? A lot of people don't think about that when they major in an industry. I certainly didn't think about that. I was like, hey, I want to go to broadcasting. Yeah, that liberal arts degree. Okay. But I never really thought about, you want to go into broadcasting. And that's when it was good. It wasn't a dying industry yet. Again, this was in the 80s because I'm 57. All right. So how often do I want to move to go chase that career? So you should be thinking about that if you're in college and you're majoring in something. How often will you be required to move? Are you willing to do it? And if you're willing to do it, are you willing to do it once you have a family, kids, and all of that? There's no right or wrong answer to it. It's just, are you prepared for that? So they clearly moved, but I'm just hoping, it sounds like either way they had to move, because the first job offer, they turned it down, but then the second job offer, they moved. So hopefully it was a move for something that they really wanted. If the first job offer, by the way, was more of his dream job, I would have taken that job offer.
I am unemployed and I'm about to turn down a full-time job offer, and here is why. I am in an industry right now that's very volatile. A lot of people are being laid off. A lot of people are leaving the industry altogether. Budgets are being cut across the board. It's a very tough time right now in my industry, but this job offer it doesn't feel like the right company. It doesn't feel like the right team. It doesn't align with what my future goals are. I really want to take 2025 as the opportunity to really control my schedule, who I work with, what I do. I really want to start freelancing to make that happen. I'm currently building a content course that I want to start selling, and I really want to start taking content creation seriously and monetizing that eventually. So there's a lot of plans I have for myself that long term sound great, but right now, I need to pay rent next month, which is a little scary. So I feel like turning down this job on one hand is opening me up to opportunities creatively, but also it's opening me up to opportunities to fail considerably. So I just need some reassurance from the universe that I'm doing the right thing. Because all I can hear in my head is my mother being like, you need to be able to pay your rent next month. What are you going to do? You need to figure this out. And I'm just thinking, if I'm ever going to take the opportunity to get control of my life and to bust out of that 9-to-5 life that I just doesn't feel like I'm aligning with that right now, I need to say no now. And I need to say yes to everything else that I want to do. And just let it happen, and hopefully the universe will take care of me.
Okay, two things I want to point out on this, and I'm not trying to be, anybody's dream breaker here, okay? I can tell she's young. On the job alignment, now I'm just going to spit out some hard facts here, okay, coming from somebody who's a little bit on the older side, okay? Young people, sometimes you have to pay your dues before you can get into something that, quote unquote, aligns with you. I don't mean this again as a dream killer, but it's kind of that, I want a job that's just gonna fit perfectly. I'm not saying that this is necessarily her attitude. I'm not saying she's not willing to, work at Wendy's, McDonald's, do whatever is necessary to make the rent meet. But sometimes before we have the privilege of being able to say, I want a job that aligns with me, sometimes you need to get that work experience first. Now, of course, there's that exception. We all know. And I was 20 years old and I built $1 million business and I started at 14. We have to put those outliers to the side, okay? For most of us, there's going to be a period of time in our life where we're going to have to just simply pay our dues. And this is one reason here on the Consumer Debt Chit-Chat channel, I preach from my own history of bankruptcies, my own history of auto repossession. I preach. Don't get yourself into debt, because the more debt you wind up in, the less choices you have to try to, quote unquote, find a job that aligns with you. When you get seriously into debt, you're going to find that you're stuck in a job and you can't afford to leave that job. And it could be for a multitude of reasons. I mean, of course, it could be, you got a spouse, you have kids to feed, but let's put that aside for a second. And let's just think of you as far as your skills and your abilities. These things take time to develop. It takes time to mature. And I understand that a lot of young people want to find that perfect job now. But I think part of what's driving that is what you see on social media. You notice on social media, it seems like everyone has everything they want right now except for you, when that could not be farther from the truth. All right. So, you get a lot of young people saying, I don't want to work the 9 to 5. I want the job that aligns with me. And I'm only using her words. Okay. I want it now. But there may be a time period where you are working for someone else. You are expanding your skills. You're expanding your social skills. You're expanding your speaking skills, your skills at learning to deal with authority, managers, all of that good stuff, right? That takes time. So I respect the desire to not want to do the rat race. And my other thought is this: okay, so you may not want to do 9 to 5. Would 2 to 11 p.m. be better? I've worked that too. Okay, I've worked that also, 2 to 11 p.m. I've worked weekends. I've had jobs where I spend, Thanksgiving and Christmas dinner at work with a bunch of coworkers who probably didn't care too much about me. This is in my 20s, okay, and even early 30s, but mainly my 20s. So there is a time period of growth where, I hate to say it, not trying to kill, your young people, TikTokers' dreams and stuff, but, there's going to be a time that, you're going to have to kind of go through the learning curve. We all kind of have to pay a price. And that's not saying, well, gee, Carrie, you just because you had to pay the price doesn't mean that the rest of us have to. I get it. And I even respect that. But there is still a period where, short of you being independently wealthy, and she doesn't sound like she's independently wealthy, if her mother's saying, how are you going to pay the rent? Okay. I don't want to work the 9 to 5. Okay, fine. But you may have to for a while. The other thing too is, I totally respect people saying, hey, it's in God's hands. I'm going to let the universe take care of it. I think that was the word she used was universe. People, I've said it before and I've said it again. You still got to have a plan. Okay. Does this young lady have a plan? You cannot, in my opinion, just sit and say, you know what? I'm just going to put it all in God's hands and leave it there. Well, God still needs you to perhaps work 9 to 5. Maybe you need to even work, 6 to 10 in addition to it. So it's okay to say, I want to leave something in God's hands. I'm relying on God or whomever your spiritual leader is. All right. But you can't just leave it there. It's like, what are you doing about it? God, come on, let's face it. We all know someone who's like that. All they do is say they're going to leave it to the good Lord and they won't do anything. And 5 years, 10 years later, even their life is no better than where it was before. Because even the good Lord needs you to have a plan.
Hey, Fabio.
Hey, how's it
How you
going?
doing?
Good.
Good. I got some bad news. Unfortunately, you're being impacted by
Yeah.
that, and so today's your last day.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Well, I hope to talk to you soon.
All right, then. Sounds good. Yeah, we'll do.
Okay. Bye.
All right, see you guys.
Bye.
I knew it.
Okay, now I got to tell you something. Did you hear all that ums and ahs and stuff? I want you to think about this. That was a more genuine layoff, lousy as it is for Fabio. And Fabio, I'm sorry you're going through this, okay? lousy as it was, that was not a corporate layoff. That was a more personal layoff. I'm not saying it was done well, family, but that to me, in some respect, had more genuineness to it than the corporate layoffs where they hire a corporate manager to come in and say things like, we're sure you have a lot of questions at this time, and we would love to be able to answer them for you. However, we cannot do that. But we will be in contact with you in the next 24 to 48 hours with information and a brochure and a pamphlet that we can give you to help you know your next steps and to help you rebuild your life now that we've destroyed it. Okay, I mean, just think about. I'd rather hear you go because you're at a loss for words because you're being human for that moment than have you give me a bunch of corporate speak. So just something to think about. But at first I heard that and I was like, oh man, that was an unprepared layoff, but it was more genuine. Not saying it was executed real well, but I'd rather have that than the other stuff. Okay, so she says here, me after getting laid off right before the holidays and still having to buy gifts. People, you don't have to buy gifts. You don't have to buy gifts, especially when you are getting laid off. Any of your friends ought to understand that you are getting laid off and you cannot afford to buy gifts. Simple as that. If they don't understand that, then you need to get better friends. So it says here, like I said, me getting laid off and you still have to buy gifts. No, you don't. In fact, I'll be honest. I'll tell you something. I stopped doing Secret Santa, a year or so ago, and I'll tell you why. Because it's not that I'm not willing to buy gifts. I decided I really, really want to pick who I give the gifts to. I really do. Gifts to me should be really personal. And I understand, people have fun and do it at work and stuff. I get that. Don't take it too seriously. But to me, it's kind of like, I realized, why am I going to spend 25, $40 on stuff that you probably don't want? And you're going to spend 25, $40 for me on stuff that I don't want. So why don't we just each keep our money? That's just kind of the way how I see it. But in all honesty, I'm at the point in my life, I decided about a year or so ago, I really, really want to make gifts. And I like making them. I make outstanding bundt cakes, okay? The cakes with a hole in the center, all right? But I decided I really want to be able to make my gifts for my friends and my family. I don't want to buy them. But by all, golly gee, if you're on a layoff, don't buy gifts. I don't even have to be laid off. If you're just simply tight on money, it's not in your budget. Don't do it.
Last Monday, when after the weekly meeting, every Monday morning we would have a weekly meeting, and during the entire course of that meeting, just like all the previous ones, the meeting was about how absolutely overwhelmed we are with work, or were with work. There's more projects than we have people to work on them, and we're just really backlogged because all of us were new. All of us. The archaeology department at this company did not exist until just a few months ago, and so they've been scrambling to try and catch up with the work. So it struck me as very odd when I asked for a new assignment, since I had completed my previous project on Friday night, that they responded that they didn't have anything for me to work on at the moment. But they would get back to me as soon as something came up. So I coasted through Monday and Tuesday, trying to keep myself busy with busy work and things like that. And then Tuesday night, my supervisor contacts me and says, hey, don't come into the office. We don't have any work for you. Don't log any hours. Which really blindsided me. We were overwhelmed with work. How do they not have work for me? It came out of nowhere and immediately sent up red flags that proved to be true on Friday. Except they didn't just contact me and say, hey, we have no work for you, we're laying you off. The way that they laid me off was to cut off all communication with me. Nobody would talk to me. From that email I got on Tuesday night from my supervisor, all the way until Friday afternoon. Nobody responded to any of my emails, any of my messages on Teams, asking for work, asking what's going on, and nobody said anything to me. And then Friday afternoon, I get an email from the IT department saying, hey, since you're being laid off, please come turn back in your computer. That's how they laid me off.
Sometimes you'll see me turn around because I have my little notepad here. Anyways, 2 points that I want to talk about. One, how many people who have been laid off were laid off shortly after hearing about how well the company was doing financially and or how much work there was to do. I want you to think for a minute about the IT technical industry. How many people were laid off from their tech job shortly after hearing, oh, we just have tons and tons of work and the company's doing so well? You begin to realize, and like I said earlier, okay, I spent 15 years in corporate before I went into education. I'll be honest, I dislike corporate so much, I'm willing to lose 10 years off my life to never have to step back into it. The world of education is truly where I belong. Then again, it helps that I'm a third generation teacher. But you learn after a while, you can't believe anything you hear out of corporate's mouth. And when I'm talking corporate, I'm talking corporate for-profit industry, okay? That's what I'm talking about. But if you think about it, think about Google and the other tech companies, and they hired so many people that they wound up hiring. And then and of course, as you know, they've had to lay off a bunch of people. So that's one thing. Again, to somebody my age, to people in my age bracket, okay, this isn't really surprising to hear. The other thing too is oftentimes, well, the layoff is bad enough, it's how they lay you off. And in this woman's case, they didn't even have the decency, her own department, her own supervisor, manager, whatever, wasn't even the one who contacted her. And I think part of the reason you get a lot of that cold contact is the fact that there's a certain level of embarrassment because they're having to lay you off. And there's probably a certain level of, yeah, we know we told you your job was fine. Yeah, we know we just told you everything was great, but now here you go. Please leave. So I think that explains part of why there's, lack of communication, why so oftentimes laid off people feel like it didn't even come from my manager. And I think, because I've been laid off too, I think that's a problem because it's bad enough to, get laid off. But then, what this lady here, hey, we're the IT department, turn in your computer. I'm kind of like, if you lay me off, you can come pick up my computer. But then they probably have something in the corporate rules about if you don't pick it up, if you don't drop it off in so many hours after a layoff, you've broken the rules, and who wants to go through all that headache?
I've been seeing a lot of layoffs in current time. The holidays are not here. And bills are not about to be here again. The average person, and we all know most people do not have 6 months worth of bills in their bank account because we're still trying to find those jobs that allow you to do that in this economy and pay your bills and put food on the table. But what has been crazy to me is listening to the layoffs, and all the jobs are like, it's not a reflection of you. You do great work and this, that, and the other. We're just eliminating the role. Well, why not find other roles if they're such a great person and a hard worker? Why not find other roles that they can thrive in since you know them as managers and other things like that? That's why we constantly say, think about yourself, because these jobs do not care about you. They don't care what you got going. They don't care it's the holiday season. They just don't care.
Remember that first TikTok video we heard, that lady explaining why so many people are laid off at Christmas time? Guys, it's a money game. Remember, when you work for corporate, okay, not nonprofit, not education, because education is not for profit per se, because it's paid by taxpayer dollars, okay, nonprofit and stuff like that, okay, organizations also. You got to remember that it's a hard lesson for young people to learn. And I felt it too when I was young. I used to think, oh my goodness, I've given my heart and soul, to this company, and now here's how they treat me. Because you have to remember something. You are human labor. and it's simply nothing more than an exchange. Okay? You will produce so many widgets for this company, and this company will pay you back in dollar bills or whatever the arrangement is. Okay? That's what you have to remember this is about. And I think it's a lesson that the sooner young people understand it, the better you will be able to direct your career. People my age, we understand it at this point, okay? And the reason they don't, just open up another job miraculously for you is, just like I said a few minutes ago, look at the IT, look at the tech industry. They hired a whole bunch of people. They created a whole bunch of jobs, but those jobs weren't created to be permanent placement. They were created to go with the flow. Here's the thing about tech, folks, you need to realize. Tech pays more. Yes, it pays more than education. Yes, it definitely does. But tech is designed to be a trendy job. You gotta look, people, at, are you in a job that's trendy, or are you more in a job that's stable? Education is not considered trendy. Okay? Education is kind of like the vanilla ice cream. Okay, it's the base to everything. All right, the pay's not high. Okay, it's stable. Your vanilla ice cream base will always be there, and you can put a whole bunch of different toppings on it. Okay, I hope that analogy kind of makes sense. But education, it's a base. It's steady. Okay, medical, not trendy. Being a police officer, a firefighter, military, these aren't trendy jobs. You got to remember, the trendier the job, the higher risk it is in layoffs. Okay, the more it pays, the higher risk it is in layoffs. The more it pays, the higher risk it is that you won't be able to replace that pay if you should lose your job. Okay, and yes, there really is, those of you in your 20s and 30s, be thinking about what you want to do in your 40s and 50s, maybe even closer to your 50s. Because the jobs that you get so easy in your 20s and 30s don't come as easily when you get older. And it was something that I actually considered when I was in my 30s. I thought to myself, okay, what type of job could I have in my 50s? Because I understood that jobs were trendy, and I didn't want that type of job. And this is why you have so many people laid off in the tech industry and stuff. All that was just foo-foo trendy stuff. They never had you as far as permanent placement in mind. And that, to this little young TikToker, that's why they don't offer you another job. It's not, for the most part, okay, unless you're showing up late and stuff, but we're going to assume, okay, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, reviews are all good and whatnot. It's not you. It's the industry you're working in. It's the organization, format, layout, style that you are working in. When they don't need you anymore, you're out. And it's part of the reason I chose to leave corporate. So you make more money than people, say, in public service jobs. Corporate people do make more money. But only a very few are going to hit the big dollars, the millions. Okay? That's very, very few. Most of us are just going to be the grunts.
Guess what I got for Christmas? It's not this fabulous wig. No, I got laid off for Christmas. Seriously. Getting pushed out the door is sometimes an opportunity, and that is how I'm trying to look at this, because I'm not happy about it. But I think no matter where I land, I'll be happier in the long run, for sure.
I remember being in my 30s, and I was happier looking for a job than oftentimes I was. Let me rephrase that. When I was in my 30s, I found that if I was in a job that I didn't like, that oftentimes I was happier looking for a job. So I hope that makes sense now. Okay. And you will find oftentimes, it really is true, okay, that sometimes, probably more than we like to admit, when one job ends, it's pushing you to another job. Okay. But you got to remember, though, you still can't just say, oh, God's just going to take me there and call it done. You still got to have a plan. You still got to work for it. But, this young lady, you take it the best way you can. But keep in mind, family, that somebody like me, I was laid off 2-3 times in a row. Okay, and that's tough. And of course, it was, in my late 20s, early 30s. But two of the 3 jobs that I was laid off from, I absolutely hated them. One of them, I used to get so ill at the end of the day. I came up with these huge headaches and stuff that I actually wound up going to see my doctor. And he actually said to me, and I quote, he said, if you would leave that job, you would actually feel better. And I said, well, why is it that I get these headaches every day at 5 o'clock? I felt nauseous, yada, yada. And he said, because you are so tense in your job that your stomach muscles, and this is what he told me. He explained, you are so tense in the job that when you finally get off work, your body actually relaxes. So if you are laid off from a job that perhaps you didn't like to begin with, that perhaps made you real tense, you may find that you're actually happier looking for a job. So it isn't always a bad thing when a job layoff occurs. Again, I'm not saying it's a great thing, and no one wants to voluntarily go through it. But if you are in a mismatched type of arena, you may find that it's actually better that you're looking for a job.
5, 6, 7, 8, walking around Christmas tree at the Christmas party hop. Hey, mistletoe hop.
I got laid off of my job of 4 years in late September, and people getting laid off are all over my For You page right now because it's the holidays. And this is just a friendly reminder that these companies do not care about you. As much as they preach family, you are just a pawn in their game to success.
Let me stop her for a second. Walmart, I have seen Walmart interviews, and they preach that their employees are family. Look at how Walmart treats their employees, and you tell me if that's family.
So use your PTO, take as many sick days as you can. They don't care, so neither should we. If you got laid off too, I feel you. It sucks, but we will get through it.
And what's the theme we're hearing over and over and over? What is it? That's right. It's not about you. Okay? It's about the company and its bottom line. You have to remember that you are just a pawn in that. Again, that's why I left it. And this does shock a lot of young people. It really does. Okay? Because they don't teach you this sort of stuff. This is just called the school of hard knocks. That's how we learn this lesson.
I was laid off 2 weeks ago, and here are the epiphanies I've had since then. For context, hi, I'm Casey. I'm 24 years old, and I was working in tech sales. I was an account executive in the fintech space, and I have over 2 years of sales experience. The first epiphany I had, and call me naive, but I had way too much company loyalty. And I feel like what sparked the company loyalty was the work-life balance. I was like, oh my God, they care so much about us. We get to work from home. We have flexible hours. I could literally go grocery shopping at 1 p.m. Nobody cares. In addition, I took a $5,000 pay cut to be at this job because the commission was a lot higher. And then 2 months into working the position, they gave me a $15,000 base pay bump. So that in itself was like, oh my God, they care so much about me. And stupidly, while I was working this job, a bunch of companies would reach out to me via LinkedIn, and I'd be like, no, I'm not looking for new opportunities. To be loyal. Stupid. Always entertain those opportunities. Number 2, don't fully trust your managers. I know a manager is a hard job and you have to have your team trust you, but my manager would always be like, you could come to me about anything, give me your honest feedback, I don't care how harsh it is. So I gave that feedback multiple times. I was in a very small sales team where I was the only woman of color, and I would speak up a lot. I would tell them multiple times that the industry they gave me to target was not working, and I would have data points to prove it. I would tell
Jesus. I forgot she said that. Yeah. This is part of growing up. You got to learn tact. You got, guys, I understand because I've been there too. And your manager says, hey, you know what? We care. Tell me what you really think. But you have to understand what it's really about. They want control of the thinking that's going on in the organization. So to say to you in a corporate structure, I mean, I'm always talking about the corporate structure here, okay? Tell us what you really think. It's not always, and I'm going to say most of the time, in your best interest. So this young, beautiful lady, I think she said she's, just, getting into her mid-20s. It's like, hey, I can tell you all the things that are wrong. This doesn't work and this doesn't work. Because all it does is it makes you a target now. Because now they go, oh, so you're going to be the one that brings in the union. It's life experience.
Tell them the training that we're doing is not useful. And I would constantly give ideas of what has worked for me in the past, and we should try to apply that. None of the feedback was taken or applied, and instead I was cut. I feel like being loud and honest is a great thing and a great quality to have, but when it comes to the corporate setting, they're the person people are going to choose to cut, because who would you rather cut? The loud person that gives harsh criticism, or the quiet one in the corner? 3, the people that you actually think care about you at work probably don't. I've seen tons of TikTok videos of people hopping on their layoff call and their manager having zero empathy and making it seem like their relationship for the last year meant nothing to them. And that is exactly what happened to me. My manager was the one who slid into my LinkedIn DMs to apply to this job, and he showed zero empathy after working together for almost a year. He didn't even reach out to me right after the situation and offer help or anything like that, radio silence for a week. And the same was to be said about a couple other managers whom I worked with daily and I thought I had a relationship with. Zero communication. 2 people did reach out to me, but other than that, not a lot of people. But I wish them the best, and I hope layoffs don't hit them because they all have families.
All right, folks. Let's go on to the next video. More TikTok up here. I'll see you in just a few minutes.